for offering me this opportunity as artist in residence at the American University of Beirut, and to have the chance to meet with students who are not here, unfortunately. So, I'm going to present a work I started in 2011 and launched in Beirut in 2012. This work is inspired by British painter Francis Bacon and the events and the 2011 events of our neighboring country, Syria. Of course, it is a weird combination, but sometimes the brain brings things together without any logic. Since the beginning of the Syrian revolution, images of dismembered bodies, human guts, and amputated human heads have become part of my daily reality. Whenever I let my eyes upon these scenes, I would ask myself if the hole that pierced this man's or that woman's face had pierced my face as well. I would ask myself if my mouth, which had become an extension of the remains of another person's face, was still in place. In reality, when one witnesses violence of this magnitude, two contradictory desires arise: evading it and facing it head on. Sometimes, in an attempt to deny what I had witnessed, the images on my screen would merge in my mind with those of Francis Bacon's disfigured faces and bodies. However, while this same mutilated flesh Bacon drew was allegorical, on my screen it depicted real events. I perceived Francis Bacon's faces, or his heads as he called them, as a reflection of the pain resulting from the violence that had been exerted upon these heads. There is a lot of flesh in his works. Mutilated flesh, flesh forming shapes attributed to humans. I see these shapes, these decomposed masses of meat, as dealt with in Bacon's work, similar to corroded innocent souls. I wondered if by painting these corroded figures, Bacon was studying ways in which he can mark or record the traces of pain on our skin, the shell of our soul. I decided to face the violence I had witnessed that year, the year of ultimate horror, using Bacon's work as guidance. Bacon's two triptychs, a study for three heads, and three studies for a portrait of George Dyer on light ground, were the chief sources I used for the first series. The first triptych, a study for three heads, Bacon drew three faces, each of them disfigured, or at least they appeared to be distressed or anxious. In the second triptych, Bacon drew his friend, George Dyer, whose portrait is depicted three times, each time in a different position and a different emotional state. My challenge was to convey disfigurement without resorting to wearing a mask or using Photoshop. I didn't want it to be a performance. Instead, I wanted to feel the emotions depicted in these portraits to the greatest extent possible by recalling most private sentiments related to fear, abandonment, despair, or death. At some point, we found, the photographer Talal Khouri and I, that aluminum was the best tool we could use, as it distorted the reflected face with minimal external manipulation. For the first series, I asked a makeup artist to color my face and neck according to the colors and shapes Bacon used to draw his heads. I did my own makeup for the other series. I would stand facing the distorted aluminum board. My colored face would move on the board for hours, with the camera capturing my reflection from different angles. Naturally, the photographer and I played with the lighting, depending on where we put it, whether it was placed to the side, at the bottom, or on top of the head. The appearance of the face reflected on the board would change. We also used two kinds of aluminum, a matte and a glossy one, each of which creates a different reflection. The pictures captured on the matte aluminum were blurry and very distorted, as you see on the left, while those on the glossy aluminum were sharper and resembled more to my actual face. Alongside this technical aspect, introducing Bacon's characters, their facial expressions, their positions, and imagining the feelings they possibly had, were the most demanding aspect of the work. It was almost a meditative act. Next, I moved to shoot two new series. This time, I relied on images of faces disfigured beyond recognition and bodies mutilated by torture I had seen on YouTube. At this stage of the work, I tried to be George Dyer, whose face changed according to his state of mind, or this is what I think Bacon was trying to say. I tried to be the transformer as Dyer and the witness to these transformations simultaneously as Bacon. I had to feel with Dyer and think with Bacon. It is a triptych, however, meaning there are three people portrayed. Did I want to present the torturer as well as the victim and the witness? I didn't. Not consciously, at least. Some people thought I did. I recalled the image of the child who was captured and returned to his parents as a corpse, the body stained by marks of torture. I imagined him alive. I wondered how he felt as they drilled the blue stains on his body. They say he was carrying lunch to inhabitants of the adjacent village. The village was besieged by the regime when he was arrested. I wondered what this 13-year-old was thinking as they mutilated his body, burned his arms, cut his flesh, removed his genitals. Was he alive at that moment? Or had he died after the bullet penetrated his small body? I colored my face and disfigured it. Maybe this way I would elevate some of his pain. I know it is a meaningless idea, of course. It's an attempt with no other purpose but to tell this child that I saw him, that I witnessed his agony. It's a way to admit his existence and his pain. In one of her books, Alice Miller, the Swiss psychologist, while commenting on children who are physically or emotionally abused, says that there is a marked difference between those who are violated and abused alone and those who are fortunate enough to have a witness to their suffering. For her, the presence of a witness is the beginning of recovery. There is someone who witnessed my suffering and recognized the injustice I suffered. I am not alone. The compassion of this witness is vital for the healing process. Apparently, the presence of a witness in itself is enough to reduce the mechanism of violence in these children once they grow up. It is an attempt with no other purpose but to tell this child that I saw him. Another image that was kept in my mind was one of the child around 8 years old sitting in a field hospital. Nothing remains of his face but his eyes. He is sitting on the bed. He has a large opening in his face, which has become an extension of his neck where his jaw used to be. His eyes wander erratically as the doctor treats his wounded leg. I found out he died the day after. Another image that was on my mind was of a woman laying still on a bed. I thought she had passed away, but when the camera zooms on her face, she suddenly stares into it. It is as if she is trying to tell us that she sees us, despite the disfigurement of her face and eyes. I tried to incorporate her stare and her face. Considering the difficulty of capturing the right moment, the right disfigurement I was seeking to reach, we took many, many pictures. We took more than 1,000 pictures. For the exhibition, I chose 28 pictures only that you will now see. In her book regarding the pain of others, Susan Sontag remarks, "But there is shame as well as shock in looking at the close-up of a real horror. Perhaps the only people with the right to look at images of suffering of this extreme order are those who could do something to elevate it, say the surgeons at the military hospital where the photograph was taken, or those who could learn from it. The rest of us are voyeurs, whether or not we mean to be." Well, maybe. Maybe she is right. But would looking away make us more humane? I think we should look at these images and feel the shame. This is the least we can do for the victims. While I was working on these images, I would tell myself that people practiced art so that violence wouldn't destroy them. This work is a manifestation of what the soul becomes when watching those who are now nothing but lumps of flesh. It is first and foremost an attempt to identify with them. Maybe by this I can alleviate some of the violation they have faced. In one of his interviews, Bacon said, "If I go into a butcher's house, into a butcher's shop, I always think it's surprising that I wasn't there instead of the animal." Bacon was surprised not to find himself there instead of the animal. A few months into the revolution, while watching the news, I would ask myself, isn't this my flesh that I see hanging from over there on the screen? Thank you.